Most people who book Norway are booking a specific image. The northern lights arching over a frozen fjord. The midnight sun over the Lofoten Islands. A train through mountain scenery so dramatic it looks constructed. These are real. Every one of them exists exactly as advertised. The problem is that they don't exist at the same time, and most tourists arrive without knowing that. Norway is the most seasonally fragmented destination in Europe. The country that exists in January is not the country that exists in July. They share a geography, and almost nothing else. The experiences that define Norway's reputation are distributed across a calendar in windows that don't overlap, that can't be combined without a trip of serious length, and that punish the traveler who arrives at the wrong moment with a particular efficiency, because Norway is also one of the most expensive countries on Earth. And spending 3,000 euros to miss the thing you came for is a specific kind of painful that no other destination produces quite as cleanly. This is what almost nobody knows when they book. The timing isn't a detail. It is the entire plan. Everything else, where to stay, how to move, how much to budget, what to expect, is downstream of when you go. Get that right, and Norway delivers. Get it wrong, and you spend a week in extraordinary scenery wondering why it doesn't feel like what you came for. Here's how it actually works. The northern lights exist between late September and late March, when the nights are dark enough. They require clear skies, minimal light pollution, and a degree of patience that most itineraries don't build in. They also require being far enough north, Tromsø, the Lofoten Islands, Svalbard, which means they require a specific route, not just a specific month. Tourists who arrive in Tromsø in February expecting to step off the plane and look up are sometimes right, and sometimes spend 4 days under cloud cover seeing nothing. The aurora is not a scheduled event. It is a phenomenon with conditions, and understanding those conditions before you go changes the entire emotional architecture of the trip. You are not waiting for a show. You are hunting for something that may or may not appear, and the hunt is part of the experience. The midnight sun is the opposite season entirely. From late May through late July, above the Arctic Circle, the sun does not set. This sounds extraordinary, and is also completely disorienting in a way that takes a day or two to physically adjust to. The Lofoten Islands in June and July are among the most visually stunning environments in Europe. The combination of jagged peaks, red fishing cabins, clear water, and 24-hour golden light produces something that justifies every photograph you've seen. But the Lofoten Islands in January, which is when many aurora hunters go, are dark for most of the day, battered by North Atlantic weather, and beautiful in an entirely different and significantly more austere way. These are not variations of the same trip. They are different trips to the same place. The mistake isn't choosing the wrong season. The mistake is not knowing there's a choice, arriving in July hoping to see the northern lights, or arriving in February expecting to hike and swim, because nobody clearly explained that Norway's headline experiences are seasonally exclusive. This happens more than it should, and it is entirely preventable. The second thing most tourists get wrong is the fjords, specifically how to actually experience them rather than photograph them from a ferry and move on. The fjords are Norway's most iconic landscape, and also its most misused tourist resource. The standard approach is a Norway in a nutshell tour, the branded route that combines train, ferry, and bus between Bergen and Oslo, which is extremely well-organized, genuinely scenic, and delivers the fjords in a format that feels comprehensive while actually being a curated surface. It is Norway seen through glass, from a moving vehicle on a schedule. This is not nothing. The Flam railway descent and the narrow fjord crossing are legitimately beautiful. But the people who leave Norway saying it changed them almost never did it from a ferry. The fjords reveal themselves on foot and by water. The hike to Preikestolen, Pulpit Rock, above the Lysefjord is 4 hours return and ends on a flat granite shelf 600 meters above the water, with a view that earns every step. Trolltunga, further north, is a longer and more serious undertaking and one of the most dramatic natural platforms in Europe. These are not secret. They are well known enough to require early starts and some crowd management in peak summer. But they exist in a completely different register from anything experienced from a cruise deck, and the difference is not subtle. The kayak is the other tool most tourists don't use. paddling into a fjord at water level, with the walls rising on either side and the silence that exists when you are small inside something enormous, is the experience that the photographs are trying to approximate and failing. It is available from multiple operators along the western fjord coast. It requires half a day and no particular skill. It is not on most itineraries, because most itineraries are built around transit rather than presence. Here's where people get confused about Norway's costs, and the confusion tends to be expensive. Norway is consistently ranked among the most expensive countries in the world for travelers, and this fact is widely known and almost universally underestimated in practice. Knowing abstractly that Norway is expensive and building a budget that reflects what Norway actually costs are different operations. A sit-down meal in Bergen or Oslo at a mid-range restaurant runs between 40 and 60 euros per person before drinks. A beer in a bar in Oslo is 15 euros. Transport between Norwegian cities, train, domestic flight, ferry, adds up at a rate that surprises people who are used to budgeting European travel on European averages. The trap is not the individual prices. It is the accumulation. A week in Norway, done without specific attention to cost management, runs significantly higher than a week almost anywhere else in Europe. The tourists who handle this best are the ones who budget Norway like a separate category, not European travel but Norway, and make conscious choices about where the money goes. Accommodation in a hytte, a traditional Norwegian cabin, is often better value than hotels and produces a more authentic experience. Supermarket food in Norway is expensive by global standards and reasonable by Norwegian standards. Self-catering for some meals is not a sacrifice, it is a sensible reallocation. The expensive meal at the right place, chosen deliberately, is worth more than 3 mediocre meals chosen by proximity to the accommodation. The Lofoten Islands deserve their own conversation because they are simultaneously the most photogenic destination in Norway and the place where logistical mistakes are most consequential. The islands sit above the Arctic Circle, connected to the mainland by bridges and a ferry system that operates on a schedule that does not reorganize itself around tourist convenience. Getting there requires either a flight into Svolvær or a drive across the E10 highway that crosses the island chain, one of the most scenic roads in Europe, which is saying something given the competition. Getting around requires a rental car, because the distances between villages and the timing of what you want to see. A sunrise over the Hamnøy Bridge, the fishing village of Rain at golden hour, the beach at Udderkleiv at any hour, do not align with public transport schedules. The tourists who arrive in Lofoten without a car and without a plan spend a lot of time in Svolvær, which is pleasant and not why they came. The tourists who arrive with a car, a loose itinerary, and the flexibility to wake up at 3 in the morning when the sky turns interesting are the ones who leave with the photographs and the memories that made the trip worth the airfare. One thing that almost nobody factors in before going to Norway, and almost everybody mentions after. The weather. Norway's weather, particularly in the west and in the north, is not reliably anything. The western fjord coast receives some of the highest rainfall in Europe. Bergen has a well-earned reputation for rain that its residents discuss with a mixture of resignation and dark pride. The Lofoten Islands in any season can produce 4 weathers in a single afternoon: sunshine, cloud, horizontal rain, and then sunshine again. And the North Atlantic system that drives all of this does not respond to itinerary pressure. This is not a reason to avoid these places. It is a reason to pack correctly, plan flexibly, and calibrate expectations away from the assumption that dramatic Norwegian scenery comes with reliable blue skies. The mist in a fjord on a gray morning is its own kind of extraordinary. The light after rain on the Lofoten peaks is different from the light in sunshine, and not obviously worse. The tourists who struggle with Norwegian weather are almost always the ones who arrived expecting conditions they saw in a photograph taken on the one clear day in 3 weeks of shooting. The flexibility point is more broadly important in Norway than in most European destinations. The country's most rewarding experiences, the aurora, a perfect fjord sunrise, a clear summit day in the mountains, are conditional on circumstances that cannot be controlled or guaranteed. An itinerary with no slack, no buffer, no room for a day that reorganizes itself around something unexpected, is an itinerary that is fighting Norway rather than working with it. The tourists who leave Norway most satisfied are almost never the ones who executed their plan perfectly. They are the ones who had a plan loose enough to abandon when the country offered something better. That is not a passive approach to travel. It is the correct active response to a destination where the most extraordinary things happen on their own schedule, not yours. Norway will show you something that reorganizes your understanding of what landscape can be. The fjords, the Arctic light, the silence inside something enormous. These are not overpromised. They are real, and they are worth the distance and the cost and the cold. The only variable is arriving with enough knowledge to put yourself in the right place at the right moment, and enough flexibility to recognize the moment when it arrives. The timing is the plan. Everything else follows from there. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, smash that like button and subscribe to When to Travel. We're all about helping you make smarter travel decisions. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And hey, if you think your friends need this, share it. Comment below with your next destination or your biggest travel question. I'm reading all of them. Let's go.